Every year on 10th September, India remembers the supreme sacrifices made by CQMH Abdul Hamid along with brave officers of the 4 Grenadiers Battalion who destroyed to smithereens the evil intentions of Pakistan at Khemkaran. I am privileged to be able to serve for a long time with such an outfit. I joined 4 Grenadiers at Ambala just when they'd returned from their war glories. Their faces glowed with pride, satisfaction and bravery. My mind races back to India's victory in the Indo-Pak War of 1965. The Indian Armed Forces vowed to keep the tricolour flying high then, as they do now, whatever the cost. The Battle of Asal Uttar was one of the largest tank battles fought during the Indo-Pak War of 1965. It was fought from September 8 through September 10, 1965, when Pakistan captured the Indian town of Khemkaran, 5 kilometers from the international border. The Indian troops retaliated. After 3 days of bitter fighting, the battle ended with the Pakistani forces repulsed near Asal Uttar. War historians regard the Indian resistance near Khemkaran as a key turning point of the war, tilting the balance in favor of India. Pakistan's invading force, consisting of the 1st Armoured Division and 11th Infantry Division, crossed the international border and captured the Indian town. Considering the situation, GOC Indian 4th Mountain Division, Major General Gurbaksh Singh immediately ordered the division to fall back and assume a horseshoe-shaped defensive position with Asal Uttar as its focal point. During the night, the Indian troops flooded the sugarcane field, and the next morning, the Pakistani tanks of the 1st Armoured Division, consisting mainly of M47 and M48 Patton tanks, were lured inside the horseshoe trap. The swampy ground slowed the advance of the Pakistani tanks, and many couldn't move because of the muddy slush. The Indian Armoured Brigade decimated the entrapped Pakistani tanks. 100 Pakistani tanks were destroyed or captured. Despite the initial thrust of the Pakistani army into Indian territory, the battle ended in a decisive Indian victory. The commander of Pakistani forces, Major General Nasir Ahmad Khan, was killed in action. Pakistan admitted that it lost 165 tanks during the 1965 war, more than half of which were knocked out during the debacle of the Asal Uttar. The Battle of Asal Uttar between India and Pakistan was one of the largest tank battles since World War II. The 4th Battalion of the Grenadiers Regiment of the Indian Army has had a rich tradition of displaying bravery and steely courage in the face of adversities. Abdul Hamid, hailing from Ghazipur district of Uttar Pradesh, was enrolled into the 4 Grenadiers Infantry Regiment on 27 December 1954. During the Indo-Pak War of 1965, the 4 Grenadiers Battalion was entrusted with a vital position before the village of China on the Khemkaran-Bhikiwen line. The battalion had been in combat for more than 24 hours when it began digging trenches and weapon pits in its defensive positions well camouflaged. The 106 mm recoilless guns were deployed along the Khemkaran-Amritsar road. On 8 September, the enemy made probing attacks on the 4th Grenadiers position. The battalion's recoilless weapons and automatics were effectively sighted. That afternoon, Abdul Hamid destroyed 2 Patton tanks, one whose commander had asked Hamid for directions just before. On 10 September 1965, at 8 hours, a battalion of Pakistani armour, supported by Patton tanks, attacked the 4th Grenadier positions. The attack was preceded by intense artillery bombardment to soften the target and to draw Indian response. By 9 hours, the enemy tanks had penetrated the forward company positions. The action that followed was incredible. Imagine the scene. Hamid sees a group of Pathans heading towards his battalion defences. Seeing the gravity of the situation, he moves out to flank with his gun mounted on a jeep. Taking cover behind the tall crop, Hamid points his gun in their direction and waits. The grenadiers hold their fire so as to not warn the enemy. Just as the tanks come within 30 yards, Hamid asks his loader to load the gun and shoot. He watches the shell go up and arch towards the first enemy tank. Even as he picks up his binoculars, he hears the blast. The tank burns before his eyes. The crew of the 2 following tanks dismounts and runs away. Hamid orders the driver to reverse and move. Around 11:30 am, the battalion is subjected to heavy artillery shelling and then they hear the familiar rumble. Hamid whips out his binoculars. 3 more tanks are heading in their direction. Hamid's jeep is hidden from view, camouflaged in the tall sugarcane crop. Positioning his gun with bated breath, he waits. The tank comes within shooting distance and Hamid signals to the loader. He watches the trajectory of the shell. It hits target. 1 more tank burns, while the remaining 2 are abandoned by the Pakistanis. By the end of the day, Hamid has destroyed 2 tanks and 4 are abandoned. Intense enemy shelling and tank fire do not deter him. He fires continuously, knocking out 3 Pathans one after another. The brave grenadiers have moved to another point behind the thicket. They're training their gun on another Pathan. They shoot it down. By now, the shelling has started. The enemy tanks have noticed the jeeps and they concentrate machine gun fire on them. Hamid is trying to trick them by constantly changing his position. Another tank lumbers towards him, and this time, before he can move, they spot each other. Both place each other in their sights and shoot. Both shells hit their targets. There's a loud blast, fire and smoke. Even as the tank is blown up, its shell hits the jeep. The impact flings it in the air. There are screams of pain, a loud crash, and then complete silence, intercepted only by the crackle of flames. After blowing up a total of 7 enemy tanks, even more than an armoured formation can hope for, Hamid is dead. India has lost a valiant Jawan. The Government of India conferred the Paramveer Chakra on CQMH Abdul Hamid. The battalion was awarded the Battle Honour of Asal Uttar and the Theatre Honour Punjab. For the first time in military history, a battalion with only RCL guns at its disposal fought off an armoured division. The Indian Army's actions tarnished the reputation of the American-made M48 Pathan. India set up a war memorial named Pathan Nagar, Pathan Town, in the Khemkaran district, where the captured Pathan tanks are on display. The citation for the Paramveer Chakra mentions the deeds of CQMH Abdul Hamid as Havildar Abdul Hamid's brave action inspired his comrades to put up a gallant fight and to beat back the heavy tank assault by the enemy. His complete disregard of his personal safety during the operation and his sustained act of bravery in the face of constant enemy fire were a shining example not only to his unit but to the whole division and were in the highest traditions of the Indian Army.